Welcome, everybody, and thank you if you're joining us live. I so appreciate it. If you're watching it later on YouTube or the platform of your choice, I appreciate that as well. This is a show about voice, all things voice, whether speaking, writing, and singing. I came to this conclusion that it's all connected. The more I got into this show, I thought, oh, of course, voice is singing and speaking. And then, ta-ta, writing voice. Maybe it makes sense to the average person, but it took me a second. As a singer, we disconnect. We disconnect speaking and singing voice. So it took me a while to connect those dots. And then when I connected the writing voice, everything just fell into place. And I'm so grateful and a bit nervous that my next guest is here. But she's so nice. I'm going to be over my nerves in no time. She's just fantastic. Let me tell you about Marion. You're in for a treat today. She is fantastic. I've said that twice, but it's because it's true. Marion Roach Smith is the author of 4 books, including The Memoir Project, a thoroughly non-standardized text for writing and life. Loving that. A former staffer at the New York Times, she has been a commentator on NPR's All Things Considered and a talk show host on Sirius Satellite Radio. She currently runs a writing lab called The Memoir Project and teaches memoir worldwide at her website, marionroach.com. Oh, Marion, I'm so thrilled to have you. Come on in, my dear.
I'm
There you are.
delighted to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I was so glad to hear from you.
Oh, thank you. And it's just fantastic when we can get more people in to talk about that elusive writing voice. I think it's the thing that I'm least familiar with and the thing I want to know the most about right now. So yes, and we're going to kick the show off. I mean, you and I had a fabulous conversation about just do the thing, right? That's the theme of today's show. We'll get there. But first of all, I want to know how you managed to just do the thing. Your story is fantastic. From New York Times, right out of college, 4 books. Tell me about little Marion and her desire to write.
My desire to write is goes back to the very beginning of my life. My parents are both writers. My sister's a writer. Cool. I married a writer, and all my friends at this point are writers. But it wasn't always like that. I mean, it was that way with my family of origin. But to find the writing community that I needed to find was important to me because it's very hard to be an artist, as you know. It's hard to have that community support. And for me, the early experiences when I started writing poetry when I was a little kid, and I loved it. My parents encouraged it. There was always a typewriter out in 2 different rooms in our house. And I learned to type when I was about 5, and I just kept doing it. So people swatted away. I remember hearing a story by Carly Simon where she used to walk into the room with her brother, Peter Simon, who is this famous photographer, and his famous friends. And she'd say, I wrote this song, and they would refer to them as her silly little songs. And right, her father founded Simon & Schuster, one of the most successful publishing houses in the world. She grew up with uber successful people. But she's one of them. But she had to elbow her way into that attention. And I think for a lot of people, it's that fundamental acceptance. And for me to find that meant to just keep writing all the time. Write. I wrote all during college. I wrote stories. I wrote poetry. I really studied the form of the sonnet, the Shakespeare sonnet, very seriously when I was in college. And really learned that sort of word puzzle association with what goes next to what really, really well. And studied Emily Dickinson. I consider myself one of her biggest fangirls. I go to her house once a year and just to basically worship. And I think it's that. I think it's giving yourself the education and the permission to build the community that you can, no matter where you are, whether you live in North Dakota and you don't know anyone who's a writer, you can now find community online. But I found community in the poets I read, in the poems I constructed, and in the teachers that I had in school until I could get out of college. I got a summer job at the New York Times, and then suddenly I was surrounded by the greatest journalists in the world. And it was a little bit daunting.
I imagine so. Oh my goodness. Straight to the top, girl. Nice.
Yeah. And there was a time when New York City had thousands of those summer jobs. So it didn't seem quite so precious because everybody I knew was either working at a radio station or a TV station, and it was a summer job. I got kept on after my summer job, and I was very fortunate. But I wrote my way to some attention there and left to write my first book. It's about giving yourself that permission to do the thing. In fact, it's really about acknowledging that this is what you were born to do. And I think
Wow.
that's really the message that I give to people all the time. What do you believe you were born to do? You don't have to tell me out loud, but you do have to say to yourself, yes.
Oh, it's so important, that permission to do the thing you want to do, because we have so many stories, and they come by, we come by it innocently enough, but they tend to run the life and run the show, and the shoulds sometimes for a lot of folks take front and stage, right?
Yeah.
Front and center. So I love that you're saying this, and you highlighted a lot of things like building your community, but it doesn't have to be actual people that are around you. It can be the poets that inspire you. It can be the writers that you read. I love, love, love that.
Yeah, not everybody
Yeah.
lives in New York City. We're near a
Right.
lot of writers, and living in New York City near a lot of writers wasn't the best thing that ever happened to me or the worst thing that ever happened to me. I interviewed a writer recently who did grow up in North Dakota and who
Mm,
did have to make his own community. And I think that saying yes to what you believe. I wrote a lot of music when I was a kid. We had a piano
nice.
and I wrote a lot of songs and they were terrible, but that's fine. And now I now have a side gig where I write lyrics for an Americana recording artist, and he's very successful, and we have the time of our lives. But all these years later, that thing that I loved, writing music and writing lyrics, has been given back to me by the universe because I kept believing, yeah, I'll get back to that. So I never gave it up. So it's saying yes, I think, and you may not have any support for it in your family of origin. You may not have the friends initially, but you'll
Yeah.
make them. And if you
Yeah.
have to, make them with the writers that you read.
Oh, I love this. So you, I mean, you come from music, you come from writing. Are you seeing the interconnection between those two voices when you kind of, and maybe you're not, but I'm just going to ask it. If you're, really polishing that writing voice, does your lyric voice get better? Are they connected?
They absolutely are,
Yeah.
because writing is communicating, and
Mhm.
communicating is about choosing one word at a time. My father used to say to me, write everything like a letter home. And what he was really saying is you really can't BS the people who raised you. You really can't say to them you're smarter, wittier, or more intuitive than they know you to be. And so you have to choose your words very carefully as you communicate to the world what it is you want to say. And like the learning the Shakespeare sonnet, which is a word puzzle, so too is lyric writing a word
Mhm.
puzzle, but so is every sentence you write if you want to get published. So
Mhm.
Emily Dickinson, who has been my lifelong education, used to cut words out of a magazine and play with them and look at them next to each other. Now we've
Wow.
got those little magnets on our refrigerators that we do that with. But
Yeah.
she liked to look and see how they looked next to each other. She was right, obviously. She
Uh-huh.
was a great education to me about looking at the language. Then I
Mhm.
was taught by my first editor, who's absolutely the best book editor of the late 20th and early 21st century. She's Margaret Atwood's editor. She was Pat Conroy's
Oh,
editor, and
wow.
she was my editor at
Mm.
26. She taught me to read everything aloud to myself, touching every word with a pencil.
Mm.
So you're hearing how it
Mhm.
sounds, which is part of the experience. So those things for me all live in the same cup of tea, right? When I'm writing
Mhm.
lyrics for the artists that I write for, when I'm writing my own stuff, when I'm still writing poetry, when I'm writing any sentence of nonfiction, I need it to sound good and I need it
Mhm.
to look good on the page. Those are all interconnected and they feed one another.
Mhm. Yeah, the sound that really resonates with me, it being, voice singing and, songwriting first and then
Mhm.
writing second. It really makes a difference, and I love your advice about, from your dad about writing a letter home. Everything should kinda sound like that, because I often find people have a different writing voice than
Mhm.
who they are.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious about this, finding your writing voice. Is that a thing? And how do you do it? How did you do it right out of college? And your first book was not that far away. So tell me about finding your voice in writing.
So finding your voice is different than style, and
Mhm.
voice and style are similar, but they have a particular, I think, distinction. And your style, we read a lot. If we're going to write,
Mhm.
we must read, but you have to be careful because as a young writer, you're going to write like the people you read.
Yeah.
So I have edited thousands and thousands of pieces of work at this point in 30 years of teaching memoir. And I can always tell when someone's reading a little F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I can always tell when someone's on a Hemingway bender, and I can always tell when somebody's reading Name Your Person, right?
Yeah.
And you need to develop your own voice and style. So your style are the ruffles and flourishes that you put in, but your voice is your soul. So if you think of it as character and personality, your character is your voice and your personality is your style. And they are different. You know, our character dictates our behavior, and then our behavior, you know, we may have a happy day and a sad day. That's our personality, right? So I think of it that way, and finding it is about finding your comfort in the same way you find any spiritual practice. What are you comfortable with? I'm a person who is direct. My voice is direct. And I think that my writing voice is very direct. Some people like to be more tangential. They like to be a bit softer with the truth. So it depends on finding it. Now you've got to do it by writing. You're not going to get it the first day. It is going to come after years. Years. So I can tell you, I wrote a magazine piece for the New York Times Magazine when I was 26 years old that changed my life and changed the lives of millions of people. That's just true. I was the first person to ever write about Alzheimer's disease in the popular press. Doesn't seem possible, but no one had ever heard of it. And I wrote this piece and I ended up on the Today Show the next day. My life just went. However, to get the lead, the opening of that piece, I had never written a magazine piece. I was scared to death. I was 26. My mother was 49 and she had Alzheimer's disease. I was losing my own mind. My father had just died. My sister was living in California. And I was sitting next to the editor working on this magazine piece. And he said, "How did it start?" And I'd written this lead and I just couldn't get it. And he finally just said, "How did it start? What was the first day?" And I said, "Well, I thought my mother was going mad when she killed the cats." And he looked at me and he very gently typed that sentence. And I knew he was afraid to scare me away. And I knew that if I wrote that and left it as the first sentence of that magazine piece, I could not back down from that voice. And that voice changed my life.
Very direct, that voice. Yeah, very direct.
Direct.
To the point.
To the point. There's no way you're not going to read the next sentence. What is she talking about?
Right, exactly.
I knew my mother was going mad, killed cats. Whoa. Now, I said it. I would never have written that sentence. But once I did, I learned where I could go and where I had to stay. If I wanted to grab you by the collar and make you care about Alzheimer's disease, which I did, because I was mad that she was sick.
Of course you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's part of the voice education.
Yeah, yeah. And just so what did it take for you? Did you know in the moment that it was right, or did it take a while to sit with it and go, can I be the person that comes up with this statement first?
It scared the living daylights out of me, which has always been a very attractive thing to me.
That's why I love you.
I very much believe in writing from counterphobia. And so, write into what scares you, write into what I just wrote a song for the guy that I write for about that process of clearing out your house after your childhood house, right? It's called The Clearing. It's on the radio right now. And there is nothing as emotional as going into it thinking you're going to lose everything in your childhood. What you find at the end of that process is that it's not the stuff on the walls, it's the stuff you have in your heart that you really carry out of that house. But you have
brilliant song.
You've got to do the clearing to learn that, right? You've got to do it to learn it. So that scared me. That topic scares me, scared people. So I wrote into it. And that's what I learned. But in that moment, to answer your question, in that moment, as he typed it and I saw the way he was looking at me, which was, "Hey, fragile writer here, this could go any way." I remember leaning in and going, yes, I want to be the person that can say that. I want to be this person.
So is it a gut thing, Marion? Is it a gut
is.
thing? Because the head will try to talk you out of so many things, but it's a gut feeling. It's just a knowing that's like, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It is a gut thing. And here's the deal. Memoir has consequences. My mother's friends were furious with me for writing about her. I had to say, and I did in the first 3 paragraphs, that she was incompetent, violent, incontinent, that she didn't know who I was. By the time that piece came out, she could not recognize me. They were furious with me and stopped speaking to me and stopped speaking to her, which was cruel beyond reason, except for 3 of them who got us through the experience. So, your voice can also come at a very high cost if you tell the truth. And
Yeah.
I had to tell the truth because what about those 4.5 million other patients at home who were incontinent? Was I supposed to pretend that my mother was not to save her
Right.
dignity so those other people could feel that they were uniquely tortured? No.
Mhm. Mm-mm.
So if you're going to tell the truth, there will be consequences, but that's your voice and you've
Mhm.
gotta own it.
You've gotta own it, and so I imagine you have some tips for how to own it when it's
Mhm.
uncomfortable. What would you say to those folks that come out with their piece in a big magazine and there's backlash? What do you
Yeah,
do?
there's backlash. Be accurate. Be
Yeah.
accurate. When I've had 100 phone calls where people have called me up to say, "I don't like that quote that and I always say,
Mhm.
"I'm so glad you called or emailed or whatever.
Mhm.
Is anything I said inaccurate? Because if it is, you have a case. But if it's
Mhm.
not inaccurate, by law, I'm allowed to get off the phone right now, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna let you yell at me. I'm gonna listen to you. We're gonna talk.
Wow.
But if I'm accurate, if I got it right, I have the
Mhm.
quote right here in my notebook or on my tape recorder or wherever. So be accurate and live
Mhm.
with that and see how you feel about it. It's not
Mhm.
for everybody. Everyone thinks
Mhm.
memoir is for them. Well, it's not always because
Mhm.
people will have another version. I have a sister.
Yeah.
We were at a dinner party recently. I told a story. Everybody laughed. I waited till the laughter, she waited till the laughter died down. And then she said, that never happened.
Of course. Oh, awesome.
No, but that's family
Yeah,
because it didn't
it
happen
is.
to her that way.
No.
It happened
No.
that way to me.
Yeah.
Same experience.
Perception.
Like she was there. I told the story. She was there. She's like, oh, I
Mhm.
wasn't there. I never happened.
Yeah.
She's wrong. But she will
Oh,
always say that I'm wrong, and that's family
yeah.
because nobody remembers anything the same way. Nobody.
No, no, they don't. And so the perception is you have to be able to own your perception if you're gonna share it. You have to stand by it, and so the accuracy is important. And where w I'm sure you've answered this a million times in your podcast, but we're going there. Where's the line between sharing your story and other people's story, right? If those people are involved in your life and they need to be part of your memoir, what do you do? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, whose story is it? So
Yeah.
you're always remembering that this is the way it happened to me, and that's what you
Mm.
say to your sister when she calls. You're
Mhm.
right, Margaret. That's not the way it happened to you. This is
Mhm.
the way it happened to me. And that's
Mhm.
why every memoir comes with a disclaimer. Just about every single one comes with, at the beginning saying this is what the way I remember it. And that's your sentence to start practicing right now. Now, writing about other people, you're
Mm.
always writing about your perspective of them. But
Right.
be careful.
Mhm.
If there's something that's actionable, I've handled and, trigger warning right here. I've handled
Mhm.
hundreds of abuse memoir. And what
Mhm.
I've seen in every abuse memoir is that people get their voice back because abuse always comes with I'll kill you if you tell. You wanted
Mhm.
this to happen, that the way people just trample your
Mhm.
voice as well and
Mhm.
first and foremost is trampling the authority of your body. And
Mhm.
what people when they start to write about it, they get the story back in their own hands. But that doesn't mean you're here to accuse or to set the record straight. There is no
Exactly.
record. The truth evaporates in the second that an event happens. But what I'm interested from you is how did you get your voice back?
Mm.
You don't have to write the scenes of abuse, but what you have to write is the effects it had on you. And then we have to see your transcendent change through it. So the story is yours, first and
Mhm.
foremost. Don't make accusations you can't back up and write from your point of view. That's your
Mhm.
story. Their story, if they want to write it, they're welcome to do so.
Mhm. Tell me about the experience of people getting their voice back. Are you seeing similar themes across your authors that when they're finished writing this book, what changes in them?
It's maybe the most fascinating thing and the greatest honor I've ever been
I bet.
invited to witness is when people get their voice back. So,
Yeah.
I had a writer say to me recently, and she has had a story of astonishing abuse and remarkable recovery, and she said to me, "I'm living differently because I'm writing about it."
Wow.
I mean, I can't even say that without crying.
I know.
She got her story in her own hands. He had had the story in his. He who perpetuated the abuse repeatedly
Mhm.
owned the tale.
Mhm.
And he, when she started to write about it, no longer has control over the narrative. I'm not saying that she changes the ending. I'm not saying she says
Mhm.
that she did something she didn't. What I am saying is that she started to craft the story in a way, according to her, what happened to her and how she transcended it. And what I've noticed in every single case is the person gets their voice back. They
Wow.
change as they're writing about it. So I've spoken to lots of therapists about this, about what the process really is.
Mhm.
And really it's that. It's that what we don't talk about enough is that the voice goes to with the territory of the body. And if you get your voice back, if you get your story in your own hands, you start to say, maybe this isn't a story of revenge. Maybe this isn't a story of setting the record straight. Maybe this is a story about getting my voice back. And that
Yes.
one I can write.
Oh, I love that because I just feel that in your words, the getting your voice back. Art can be cathartic and it can be healing
Yep.
and yeah. So do you find these authors when they have to share the book, at readings and stuff? How do they navigate those feelings? Because I imagine when you read it again, you're like, "Oh, man, that was a terrible time in my life." How do
Mhm.
you coach authors to present the information without living in that space still?
Sure.
Or yeah.
Mostly the reading is the easy part. The hard part
Uh-huh.
is rewriting it. So the question
Yeah.
becomes, what are you asking a memoir writer to do? Are you
Mhm.
when she goes back into a trauma, are you asking her to relive it? Are you
Mhm.
asking her to reanimate it, make it come
Mhm.
back to life? Or are you asking her to stand coolly here and report on it? So what people find all the time, because I have this conversation several times a day, every single day with writers, 'cause I work with hundreds of writers a month,
Mhm.
is that people are afraid, as they should be. They don't wanna relive it, but I'm
Mm-mm.
not asking you to. Never, in under any circumstances would I ask you to, and if that's what your fear is, please get yourself a therapist during this time to go through this process with.
Mhm.
What we're asking you to is to choose what from it you would
Mhm.
like to cover and illuminate for us. What
Mm.
transcendent change? Because memoir is a very simple structure.
Mhm.
You go from here to there. It's not autobiography where it takes on
Mhm.
your whole life. You go from
Mhm.
here to there. When you did not know something to when you did, when you couldn't do something to when you could, or when you have to quit something to when you do, and how life
Mhm.
gets better. And so they have this choice of what
Mm.
territory to take on. And
Mm.
I think that changes for them what they're afraid of. Reading it later, it becomes a dissociative a bit experience. Reading aloud,
Mhm.
I mean, being out in the world and reading your stories, everybody goes into a sort of other state. But it's
Mhm.
writing it that people are most afraid of. And I think
Oh.
in the right hands, they get over that. In all of
Mhm.
my classes, we never use cameras. Many
Mm.
people are in my classes under assumed name. They have a made up email because they are dealing with territory that they're not ready to do publicly. So all of my
Oh.
classes are run under the condition of anonymity. Nobody knows anyone else's last name, and we take a pledge of confidentiality. So you can
Mm.
write it here, read it to us, share it with us. Nobody shows it to anyone. And that I think allows people to choose what they're writing.
Mhm, and not what they think will be accepted or, not shamed or judged or
Yep.
shushed. Yeah,
Yep.
that consideration is fantastic. Like, good on you for hitting on that because I bet you get more people sharing, and I bet there's more books out there because you are so thoughtful and
Well, I
sensitive.
think it helps people
Mhm.
enormously to feel that they can have a considered space. Your
Yeah.
family isn't up to this. Your family
Mm-mm.
is not up to shepherding you through a book experience. Trust
Mm-mm.
me, I know. And I have a husband who's a longtime newspaper editor, and when he's hungry, there is no reading people to him or getting an honest opinion. And I think also he's a
Oh.
newspaper editor. He's not a nonfiction editor. He doesn't
Yeah,
know the form of memoir.
yeah.
I have other people for that. And that's you've got to get into a community where you feel safe and where you can
Yeah.
try stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm glad you brought up your husband because I thought it was so cute that you 2 work together, like, you work in the same space. Similar spaces, not exactly the
Yeah.
same as you just outlined, but, I just think that that's very interesting. You can bounce things off each other when the moment is right. You have a champion that knows how to coach you in the right direction, so that's
Yeah,
very
he
cool.
knows what I need when I'm writing a book. He knows that There's, a lot of quiet that's required, and I'm gonna walk around the house talking to myself all day long. And
Me
it's taken
too.
him years to get
Yeah.
used to that.
Yeah, I do too. And we must be like artists to the
I
core
love
if we're
that.
walking around talking to ourselves out loud. Yes. I remember watching Castaway with Tom Hanks, and he's on the island with this volleyball. And I'm like, why isn't he talking to the volleyball? Because I talk out loud all day long. It's so
All
quiet in this movie.
day long.
It's the first time I realized it wasn't usual to do this.
I think it's very
So
my husband and daughter both came home during COVID. My husband is just when he also retired, and the first couple of days, they
mhm.
started calling out to me, you're talking to yourself." And I finally confronted both of them. I said, "I've been alone in this house for 25 years. You have been at school, now out in
Yeah.
the workforce, and you've been in the workforce.
Yeah.
This is how it goes. Don't try to silence it." 4 books have come out of this process, countless Americana
Needs
songs,
to happen.
whatever. This
Yep.
is how it goes. Get over it.
Yep. Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I
Yep.
just did it the other day. My husband came in the office. Are you talking to me? No.
No. As a matter of fact, no.
I could lie and say yes and make up something. No, no, I'm not.
No.
Okay, so the memoir vein is very interesting to me. What drew you to working on memoirs and coaching others on memoirs specifically?
So when I wrote that New York Times Magazine piece that I referred to earlier, a colleague of
Mhm.
mine at the New York Times sidled up to me after it was published and said, "Nice piece of memoir." And I thought, "What?" Because I was 26 years old. I thought
Mhm.
I thought it was my memoirs for 95-year-olds looking
Yeah.
back in their lives. I had no idea.
Cute.
And so I had to learn the rules of memoir when I sat down to write a book, and my great
Mhm.
editor, Nan Talese, taught them to me. And
Mhm.
that they have an argument, that they're not everything you know about your
Mhm.
life. They are argument driven, they are not plot driven, and
Mhm.
that you must be able to propose that argument in a series of scenes curated from your life that allows us to see that transcendent change from here to there.
Mhm.
Oh, I had a
Mhm.
lot to learn. So I
Mhm.
wrote then 2 other nonfiction books. I wrote that book. I wrote a book from the magazine piece that encompassed my mother's disease and my response to it. And then I spent 2 years behind the scenes in the world of forensic science and went to blood spatter analysis
Wow.
school and forensic entomology school and had this wild, wonderful time like people have on CSI, and wrote that book. And then I wrote another book. And then I had been teaching memoir all along at a local art center. It was just a lot of fun. It was just something to
Mhm.
do specifically because I didn't have any friends here who were writers. Once I left New York City and moved
Mhm.
to upstate, I missed that conversation that I had with all of those friends. And my
Mhm.
husband, is a newspaper editor, but he couldn't talk about what I wanted to talk about. So I figured, well, I'll just run a little class at the art center for 8 people and we'll talk about memoir. Because I thought in my career, I had learned a great deal about how to tell your story. And I
Mhm.
had always loved the personal essay. And I ended up getting a great gig on NPR as a commentator, which was these very quirky personal essays. And I thought, I have something to say here
Mhm.
and something to teach. And it was glorious. But then 10 years ago, I decided to take it online. And that's when life got really, really interesting because a global audience is very different than a
Oh, yeah.
hyper local one. And
Wow.
I've just, I just got my 120th book in the mail the other day of someone who's worked with me. And we've long ago lost track of how many personal essays, how many modern
Oh
love
my gosh.
columns, but 120 books on my shelf over there
Fantastic.
is amazing, and I cry every time I get one. But what I
Mm.
learned, and this is the thing, is that it wasn't my energy to keep. That what I
Mm.
know is not supposed to go with me, and that I had to
Mm.
stop and take a recognition of that. It was bugging me a little bit. Like I was like, "Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I'll write another book." And then I thought, "But maybe you could just tell a bunch of other people how to do this, and maybe that would feel good." And it felt so good
Mm.
that I just do it every single day, all the time, in every
Mm.
time zone. Because if you know how to do something,
Mhm.
you need to move it along in this earth because this is not something that you just learn and swallow and don't
Mhm.
share. So
Mhm.
that's really what my motivation is. It not my energy to keep is my phrase that I use.
You are just a master of language. I'm just hanging on every word. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, not your energy to keep." This
Isn't
is
it a
so
it was taught to me
fantastic.
by a therapist, and because I was fussing like 10 years ago, I
Yeah.
don't know what," and she just said
Yeah.
it just rolled out of her. It's not, well, Marion, it's not your energy to keep.
Wow.
And I said,
She's
"What
right.
did you just say to me?"
She's right.
And I thought,
Mic drop.
I'm going to build an entire business on that phrase.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's it. And that and
Thank
teach
you.
everything you know. Those are my
Mhm.
2 phrases that I use all the time to myself.
Well, and you certainly do. You give away so much amazing information, and it's just accessible to anybody, so that's fantastic. So I want to go into memoir, and I was interviewing a vocal coach a couple months ago, and she said the key to writing great songs is to risk something. And I'm wondering if that's for folks that are like, I think I have a memoir in me, or I have 6 or 7 ideas for a memoir. Is there risk involved in deciding which one to go with?
Absolutely. I
Mhm.
love that. I love that question and I love that phrase. And
Mhm.
it gets back to the counterphobia. But when you start to think about what your argument is, and
Mhm.
everybody, is like, what do you mean? I just want to write about my life. No,
Mhm.
you want to show us from one area of your expertise at a time. And you
Mhm.
probably have 12 areas of expertise. And I don't mean you're professional. I mean what you know after what you've been through. So, like,
Mhm.
I did 15 years of caregiving with my mother, and I know that caregiving requires boundaries. And I've raised 12 dogs, and I know that dogs do things for people that people cannot do for themselves. So, what you want to do all the time with memoir is write from one area of your expertise and show us how you know what after what you've been through. That's what you want to do. And that's
Mm.
what memoir does so beautifully. So you can confine yourself to something small
Mhm.
that is illustrated by some experience you had. And the risk factor is when you say, I really do know this. I really do know that closure is a myth. I know that. And I know that
Mm.
99% of the rom-coms written before maybe 10 years ago were all about closure. The
Yep.
Disney movies I grew up with, he comes and saves me. I don't have
Right?
to be smart.
And then
The
it's
Dis
over.
the Disney movies my daughter grew up with, Moana, right?
Right?
Ariel, mm-mm.
Uh-huh.
Nobody's gonna save those young
Uh-huh.
people. They're gonna
Mhm.
power their way through. So
Mm.
what you wanna risk is giving us an area of expertise and showing us how you made a transcendent change from when
Mhm.
you genuinely believed that closure was real to how hard it was to shed it to what you know now. Now, the
Mm.
hardest ones to write, the riskiest ones to write, are if you're writing from the argument that not all inheritances need to be accepted. So
Mm.
imagine trying to quit the politics of your family.
Wow.
How about the religion of your family? How about the
Wow.
religion and politics of your family? Let's say
Wow.
pick your religion that's
Mhm.
deeply enculturated, right? Pick the
Mhm.
politics that maybe you've grown out of or don't agree with, or maybe one candidate has provoked you to have a radical change. Now we're
Mhm.
getting into the risky territory. And if you
Mm.
can show me how you can live through the resistance, because the resistance to change family culture is just as difficult as another kind of addiction or attention attracting
Mhm.
cultural lifestyle, right? So you are risking a lot
Mhm.
by proposing that argument and then by showing us how to do it. That's a
Mm.
beautiful risk.
Mm. Tell me more about the word show, because the show don't tell is really top of mind in memoir. Tell me
It
how we
is. So we
yeah.
the rule that we pass around is show, don't tell. But
Mhm.
it's really show and tell because obviously you have to tell me some
Mhm.
things. But here's the deal. If I say to you, "It was the saddest day of my life," you learn nothing.
Right?
I don't know what just other days of your life were like, and I don't know what sad means to you. But if
Mhm.
you show me, maybe you've been married for 27 years and your partner dies and your family is there for the funeral and they're sitting downstairs and they want to help you and you say, "No, I just need to go up and get my dress on. It's hanging in the bathroom. It's steaming." And you
Mhm.
go up and you take that dress off the hanger and turn off the steam. But for 27 years, someone else has been zipping up your dress. You haven't even had to
Mm.
ask since you were on the 3rd date. And
Mhm.
everything you try putting your hand down your back, you try putting your hand on, you cannot get that zipper
Can't.
up.
Can't.
So you say, "All right, I will go downstairs to my family and ask them to zipper the dress, but I am not going down the stairs until I put my charm bracelet on." Because I've had that charm bracelet on for every high emotional holy day of my life. And you go to get that charm bracelet, and anyone that's ever had one knows that someone else has to clasp it. And for 27 years, you've been handing it to another person. And you flip it over your wrist and it slides to the floor. And you put it on your counter, and as soon as you pull it, the clasp goes under your wrist. Now you're walking down the stairs with a clasped charm bracelet in your fist and an unzipped dress. And as soon as your foot hits the first step of that staircase, you hear a sound come out of you that is real keening. You are wailing with grief. Show me that, and you will never have to write a sentence like it was the saddest day of my life.
Wow. Oh, I just want to hear you talk.
Oh, good. We could just move in together and talk to ourselves all day long.
Oh my goodness. This is fantastic.
That show. What people say is, it was the saddest day of my life. It was so incredibly sad. I mean, I'll never get over it. It's unbelievable. It's so sad. I didn't learn anything.
No.
But if you just go for the details, the dress plus the bracelet plus the walk down the stairs, the reader says, oh my God, that is so sad.
So the reader comes to the conclusion on their own without you leading the witness, if you will.
Let them do
they'll
the
get
work.
there.
It's called writing math. Show is, and no one ever explains this to young writers. It's math. Detail plus detail plus detail adds up to an emotional response. If you say it was sad, you're robbing the reader of having the experience. So don't tell me the name of any emotion. Don't do any diagnostics for me. Give me the visuals and let me say, oh, dear God, that is the saddest damn scene I've ever read.
Oh, my God. Oh, girl. You're fantastic.
Oh,
I'm going to talk about your beautiful voice in just a moment.
Oh, my.
Because I can't get enough of it. And I'm curious what your background is. I mean, you told me you write songs, so we'll get there. But before I do, we had some interesting chat before we got on about the just do the thing, right? And so there's a lot of blocks for artists, authors, to even show up to their computer to do this. But it's just this idea that keeps niggling in the back of their mind and it won't leave them alone.
Right.
What are some things and some tips and tricks that you show and you tell your authors about how to get over those blocks? Because a lot of people, again, for an example, I need to have the perfect computer, the perfect office, I need to have no job so I can sit down 9 to 5. How do we get over some of those things that keep us from our art?
Yeah, it's a great question. And no, you don't need to have an office. My authors are telling me constantly, oh, I want to move to Paris and have stop it. If you have a 5 square inches on a table that you can report to every day, don't put your taxes on that 5 square inches. This is your writing space, right? So you are going to find 45 minutes a day. That's it. 5 days a week. If it means getting up before the rest of your family, you're going to do it. If it means staying up later, you're going to do it. Here's the deal. Writing a book, for instance, nobody sits down and writes a book. You write 3 pages a day, 5 days a week. That's 15 pages a week. That's 60 pages a month. That's a 300-page first draft in 5 months. You never get out of bed and say, I'm going to write a book. You say, I'm going to write 3 pages today. If you miss a day, you never double up. You never write 6. You go back. Why? Because art needs to be habituated. I need to make this a habit that you will not break. I need you to take today your notebook that you have. You go to the grocery store. I don't want a leather notebook. I don't want an expensive notebook. I don't want any. You get those little packages of those little spiral notebooks. Get 20 of them. I want you to tie one to the gear shift of your car. There's one tied to the gear shift of my car. There's one in my purse. There's one next to the bed. It's in the bathroom. There's one in the kitchen. And I want you to, whenever something pops into your head, you want to be hospitable. Here's the only little sign that I keep on my desk. It says, be hospitable. And you can see it's fading because it's about 20 years old. Oh, wow. Be hospitable to your talent every single day. When a good idea pops down into your head when you're sitting at a traffic stop, you write it on that little notebook. When you think of a song lyric, you write it down. You don't put it off. You don't put it off. You don't put it off. It's today. And everything starts from here. Right now, today, it starts. You're an artist. You're going to make some art. You're going to start by being hospitable. So being hospitable is the best thing that my subconscious mind has ever told me. And I live by it. So be hospitable. I literally once wrote the lead for a story on the inside of a hem of a skirt in church.
Oh my God.
Because I didn't have my notebook with me. So I flipped my hem up and I
Oh, to be
started
there.
scribbling. Crazy woman, but you know what? I
I
got
love
it
it.
down because you're
You got
not
it
going to
down.
remember it later.
You're not.
You're not.
Singers know this. If you have a song idea, you get out of bed and you voice memo that sucker. I don't care if it's 3 a.m, your voice sounds like this. You do it.
Yep.
You'll figure it out later.
Yes, you will. I have woken up. I woke up not long ago to a thing scribbled on the pad next to my bed that said, menopause made me do it. And I thought, who wrote it and what are we talking about?
That's hilarious.
I was like,
oh, that's a title right there.
interesting.
I would read that.
Right.
Menopause made me do it.
Yeah. I wrote another one in the middle of the night that said, don't flip her the car keys. What that means is don't put the insecure one of you that lives in your, because all artists have many people that live inside us. Don't flip her the car keys. Don't let her be in control. Let the confident one be in control. You would never let that one drive the car. That's when you have to comfort all the time and say to her, honey, I got this. But don't, for God's sake, don't flip her the car keys. And I thought, what a great phrase. I wonder who wrote it, Marion.
There's another good book title.
Yeah.
I would read both of those books.
Yeah, there you go.
Writing them. Okay, good. Yeah, okay. So permission is another word. It's like, because I think this is something we talked about earlier, but I think this is the main thing. We just need to give ourselves permission. But what does that look like and how do you do it?
You make time. First of all, permission sounds very, I don't know, spiritual. And it is. You have everything on you that you need to be a writer. You have experiences and they're in there. So I always talk about annotation. In other words, you're going to draw this thing up and bring it up to the fore. You're going to annotate from yourself. But you got to give yourself permission that you can just scribble it down. I'm not saying you're going to publish it today. I'm going to say first you've got to write it. So give yourself permission to just cough up what you have on you. And if you don't know how to do that, here's the best tip I know. Your best friend is a paper calendar. Why is that? Now, why would this in this day and age be such a good idea? Well, because the calendar exists to tell us what as I refer to them, high emotional holy days are coming up. Okay, what's the next one that's coming up? Well, in this country, maybe it's Thanksgiving. Let's just talk about a fairly non-denominational one, although that's pretty controversial these days too. So let's just say it's something about the fall. Let's just agree that, okay, the seasons are changing.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have a little story about when the seasons changed? Do you have a little story about, I don't know, buying your kid her first school shoes that you'd like to write for next September? Start looking at the calendar and start seeing what's 2 and 3 months ahead. You have a Hanukkah story, a Christmas story, a Kwanzaa story. You have a Passover story. You have an Easter story. You have a 4th of July story. Oh, wait a minute. I really do. I really do have a funny story about July 4th. Okay. Take the calendar and write down on July 4th, just write what the essay is, maybe the title or what's going to go in it. And then go back 3 months and start it then. Start it ahead of time, knowing. So put the name of the essay on the July 4th, but then back, so June, May, April 4th, you're going to start it. And you put that on the calendar. Start July 4th essay. And this way you make it possible. This is the hospitality that you always smack your head every Thanksgiving and say, I can't believe I didn't write that essay about that childhood Thanksgiving. So you want to start that Thanksgiving essay now. Get it out, get it published. It's time. Everybody just needs to be hospitable and give themselves the time. And I find the calendar to be the greatest possible asset for that.
Oh, it's so good. I'm glad you brought this up because I was just rewatching a webinar you and your husband did about op-eds and just get writing, like just do it. You don't just save all your writing for your book, get some pieces out there, get some traction happening for yourself. And that's really easy to do. It's not a book, which is humongous. It can be if you don't break it down to, it's just a, couple pages of something. I can do that. right?
You
Baby
can.
step.
I mean, that's what the
Yeah.
personal essay is so great because if you can write a
Mhm.
personal essay, you can write 75 of them and you have a book. A personal essay is just a scene. It takes on one thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Op-eds or opinion pieces, the op-ed actually means opposite the editorial page in the newspaper. The
Mm.
op-ed is one of the single greatest ways to get a book contract. If you've got
Mm.
something to say, and you do not have to be a former Joint Chief of Staff to write an op-ed. If you adopted a dog during COVID, and then recently, like millions of people, you have finally gotten called back to the office, and that
Mhm.
having that dog is really hard, but you're gonna do it, and you're gonna
Mm.
keep that dog. You've got
Mhm.
an op-ed on you in which you can implore all those other people who did the same not to dump that dog back at the shelter. If you
Mm.
fly fish like I do, you've noticed that the streams have gotten cleaner with the newest regulations. You can write an op-ed from the stream. If
Mm.
you have ever put a kid on a school bus in this
Mhm.
country with all of these guns, you have
Mhm.
something to say about
Mhm.
your fear and about raising a child the best way you know how amid the gun culture of the United States.
Mhm.
No matter what your politics, you have something to say, and you have dozens of them. Many of my clients have gotten book contracts after publishing a well-placed op-ed. 2 of my 4 books came out of shorter pieces that I wrote where somebody contacted me and said, I'd like that to be a book. Would you be interested in talking to me? And that's
Mm.
how I also find that if you write short first, you really hone your argument.
Mm. Oh, wow. So many great tips today. Oh my goodness. It's just fantastic. And there's two places I want to hit. But before that, I always, in my coaching with singers, I always say everyone can sing. Is everyone meant to be a professional singer and sing at the Grammys? I don't know, maybe, but everyone can sing something. And it sounds to me like everybody has something to say. And you can form whether it's a memoir or an op-ed or something. You got something in you. You got a story of some kind.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. You have
fair.
many stories. You have
Yeah.
many areas of expertise, and what most people get all bound up with is they think memoir is autobiography. So they think it's
Mhm.
that one big book that begins with your great-great-grandfather and ends with what you had for lunch today. That's a book you're never gonna finish and no one's ever
I
gonna
love
read.
that.
Sorry, let's just break it to you right now. If you start writing from one area of your expertise at a time, you
Mhm.
instantly, today,
Mhm.
this second, after you've heard these words from me, have a
Mhm.
writing life because you can
Mm.
write op-eds, essays, long form essays,
Mhm.
blog posts, and books.
Mhm.
You can write 8 or 10 book-length memoir in this life, which many of
Mhm.
my clients do now because you take on one area of your expertise at a time. The dogs do things for people that people cannot do for themselves is a beautiful little book to be written from the 12 dogs and what they've taught you that you had in your life. But that's
Mhm.
a very different book than the recovering from your mother's Alzheimer's disease.
Mhm.
Or I've gardened for 30 years, and my sister is this world famous garden writer. She's amazing. She's America's premier horticultural writer. You should see my garden. It's like a mad woman. And, and I love it. But I don't garden for that. I garden for the sheer joy of it because it enriches my soul.
Mhm.
So when I write and publish from the garden, I'm always arguing that gardening enriches the soul. So what
Mm.
are your areas of expertise,
Yeah.
and what do you wanna do with them? Some of them I
Mhm.
wanna write songs from, some of them I wanna write essays from, some of them I wanna write op-eds from, and some of them I wanna write
Mhm.
books from. And
Mhm.
now we've got a writing life.
Oh, loving this. The last two places I wanna go is your awesome podcast, which, by the way, I had to Google Qwerty because I was like, "What is this?" I had the biggest laugh once. I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes." So I'll let you explain what that is in just a moment. And the other one is AI in writing. So let's start with your podcast, Qwerty. Tell the folks what this is, first of all, if they don't know already, and second of all, how that experience was of using your voice in a different way to share this information.
So, thank you so much. I so appreciate that. I love doing Qwerty. As I said before, I'm very counterphobic, so I like doing things
Mm.
that scare me, and doing
Mhm.
my podcast every week scares the living daylights out of me. Absolutely. These are well-published authors that I interview, and
Mhm.
if you don't think that I have lots of such respect and such admiration for what people bring to the printed page, and you've
Mhm.
gotta be ready for the conversation to go in every kind of direction. As you know, look at this
Mhm.
conversation we're having.
Mhm.
So I'm about 130 episodes in. It's all published authors, and it's a lot of fun. Some of them are
Mhm.
Pulitzer Prize winners. So I try to get a lot of people who are would be otherwise underrepresented. So
Mhm.
indigenous authors, other authors of color. But QWERTY, if you look at your keyboard, it's QWERTY. It's the upper left hand corner of your keyboard, and
Yeah.
so it's named for the keyboard. And it is all about the writing life, and it's a lot of fun. It's fun for me. It's hard work, as you know, to interview people, and you've gotta just stay calm because
You just have to
someone
say
will say
cool.
something, and you'll be like, "Woo!" and off we go. And good. My
Good.
hope
Yeah.
is to share with people who don't have access to the kind of writers I have access to, who are where I was when I first started, who desperately need to have writing community. And that's one of the things I love about the digital world is we build community. I've built some great friends online that I've never met, right?
Isn't it fantastic?
It is fantastic.
It's so great.
It
The
is
world we live
fantastic.
in is just phenomenal. For those of you watching, you can visit Marion on her website, marionroach.com, and you can find out all about Qwerty on there and all of her amazing programs and her books and everything fantastic. I want to talk AI with you because there's mixed emotions about this whole thing in the writing world. In a general overview perspective, how do you feel about AI in writing, and where can we use it? Where should we not use it? How is it helpful? How is it not helpful?
Yeah, I'm not a
Thoughts?
bit afraid of AI, and I think
Love
that
that.
I love the integration of knowledge always.
Mhm.
When the internet, in the dark days of the internet, when everyone was fearing and we were all getting pinged with the ads and all of those things, with a very, very short period of time, what we experienced was the wonder of accessibility of
Mhm.
truth. Now,
Mhm.
there's lots of non-truth, absolutely. But you need to be a discerning user of everything
Mhm.
online, and you need to
Mhm.
learn media literacy. Media literacy, very important.
Nice.
What's a
Mhm.
good source? What isn't? And you don't just
Mhm.
go taking stuff off of an online source and quoting it. If I find a great quote by somebody for a nonfiction piece, I find her and I go and track her down online, and then I call her and I interview her. So first I want to say
Mm.
that to people, you have that obligation. AI doesn't scare me a bit because it's producing for the writers that I know. For instance, my
Mhm.
best friend is America's foremost science writer. He's unbelievable. He's so good at what he does. And he was
Mm.
explaining to me the other day that, he's been reading scientific papers for his entire career. He's trained as a physicist, but he writes about dietary fat now. And he's a very interesting person. His name is Gary Taubes. And he
Mm.
has to read studies from all over the world. And he used to
Wow.
have to hire a translator on the German study that's the most blah, 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 and then you trust the
Mm.
translator. With ChatGPT, he gets instantaneous translation. He's getting
Wow.
better information every day than he's ever gotten. He
Mm.
knows he can depend on the translation. So,
Mhm.
the fear we have of plagiarism, and I also serve as a trustee of my university, so I know what the professors are doing
Mhm.
to guard against plagiarism, and they've got this handled. We're good. But for the writer, it's about getting accurate information. So,
Mhm.
how can you use it to get the most accurate information you want? Because you don't ever want to be perpetuating nonsense. And
Mhm.
so, fearlessly going into the pursuit of accuracy is what I always do with sources. And so, I don't worry. I don't worry about this. It's
Mhm.
new, it's early days, but so far for my nonfiction writers in particular, this has been a glorious thing to happen.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you advise that you use it to help with outlines and things, or do you advise your writers to just do it on their own steam and just use it for facts?
I advise my writers to use I believe in mapping out a piece of work. I don't do outlines. I use what we
Mhm.
call a memoir map, which is a very different, very specific thing that I
Mhm.
teach people to do. I don't believe in using, assistants that way because in
Mhm.
the intellectual the AI can't know the events of your life. So,
Exactly.
going through and
Mhm.
curating from your life the scenes that you need to show me the 3 acts of a piece of memoir. The 3
Mhm.
acts are what's at stake, what I tried, and what worked. No piece of AI can do that for you. So you need to do the work of
Mhm.
mapping out your book. So I
Mhm.
really don't think that it has a place there in
Mhm.
creative nonfiction or in
Mhm.
memoir. I think it has a great place for my nonfiction writing friends. And I haven't yet found I don't use Scrivener. I use a very low tech way of mapping out my books. As I said, I have this thing that we use at the Memoir Project called the Memoir Map that's very, very useful, and it's
Mhm.
hands-on, and so I wouldn't defer to AI on that one.
Excellent, loving that. I imagine AI might be helpful for social media posts or something like that once you've got your book out.
Yep. I think so. I think taking all the help you can get to
Yeah.
publicize your book, be careful,
Yeah.
spell the stuff right, check the
Right.
spelling.
Yeah.
I with Qwerty, for instance, I run the transcripts of every single episode on my
Mhm.
website, and the AI transcriptions I've gotten just don't have the discernment to know how to spell
Mhm.
some things. They're tough on if the word "your" or the contraction, your or your,
Mhm.
possessive or
Mhm.
contraction.
Mhm.
They have trouble with that. You're going to have to copy edit everything you get from AI. Don't just put it out there.
Yeah.
Have a look at it. You're a writer. Your authority depends on your accuracy. Absolutely.
Ooh, that's so good. That's so good. And I realized just now that I forgot to ask you about your beautiful speaking voice back in the podcast section. So we're backtracking for a second here. Do you work on your voice? Do you have like what's going on there? Because I enjoy listening to it on your podcast, and it sounds very, very professional sounding.
Oh,
So
thank you. I
yeah.
appreciate that.
Mhm.
I grew up with a very heavy New York accent, which I worked very hard to shed
Mhm.
when I decided that I wanted to be on the radio. And in college, I started as a disc jockey, and I worked on my voice so that it was
Mm.
articulate. And then I
Mhm.
worked on my language so that I didn't say and a lot. I worked hard
Yes.
on it. And I think it's important. I think, again, authority is built by being able to track what you're saying. When people are listening to you, it's very
Mhm.
important to be careful with your language. But
Mhm.
then there's but the sense of the sound of the language was worked on. I did a lot of work on NPR. I had a talk show for years on Sirius Satellite Radio. So
Mhm.
yes, it's a very comfortable low register, and I think that it works.
I'm glad you brought up your beautiful show because I forgot to mention it. So yes, the NPR show for sure. It was in her bio if you want to check it out. The title's there. Marion, thank you so much. I'm mindful of your time. You've got to go. So it was an absolute pleasure. I'm still not quite present in my body because I'm so excited. But after I'll watch this again and go, "Oh my gosh, look at all this great info."
You
So
did
thank
so
you.
beautifully. I
Oh,
so appreciate the professionalism that you brought to this conversation.
oh.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thank
All
you.
right.
All
Thank
right.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I've just let her go to the wings. Marion, I forgot to tell you, you can stick around and say hi after. You can go. There's a button in the corner. You're a smart gal. I'm going to close the show off real quick. So remember, you can visit Marion online here at marionroach.com. And it's got all of her courses, books, and links to her podcast. So, and there's a lot of free resources for you. So you don't have to worry about, new to writing. Where do I start? She's got you. So thank you very much if you were watching. I see that we have some people watching, so that is so cool. And this is always going to be on YouTube afterwards, so you can check it out on our channel, Voxsana Podcast. We are at Voxsana on at Voxsana.co on Facebook and at Voxsana Voice on Instagram. So check for us there. And in the meantime, keep using your voices because I say this every time. It matters. It really does. You have a lens. You have a perspective. You have a story that no one else has. So please share it in whatever